But Vivek Karju, the one common factor which is coming once again is Pakistan. Now, Pakistan remains the elephant in the room in Jammu and Kashmir. Over the last few years, in the initial period after Article 370, there was clearly a lessening in the violence. But in the last few months, we're again seeing an escalation, albeit in a new theater. Do you see any connection at all between what's been happening in Pakistan and indeed this intensification of violence in the Jammu region?
I do. I think Asim Munir is showing to his commanders that he too has the mettle to take the battle across, that he will not let the side down, and therefore, despite all the troubles, the economic troubles, the political troubles, and the troubles on its western borders, Asim Munir is under some compulsion to show results in J&K, and I would only add that this is not, I'm not saying something which is rocket science. This is something that I'm sure our security planners would have anticipated. Now, the reason why these incidents, these terrible incidents are taking place in the Jammu division are naturally and the manner in which to combat them, I think there are other panelists, Mr. Khoda, my friend General Hasnain, who are in a better position to answer this.
But the Pakistan angle, sir, do you fear, as you said, with the new military leadership, with a new government in place, that there is the fear that Pakistan has once again turned its gaze towards cross-border terror? They're once again trying to raise the stakes. Is that a fear that you have?
I'll tell you what my real concern is, and please allow me 30 seconds on this. After Pulwama in 2019, we enunciated a doctrine of preemption, which was essentially that if we see preparations being made for a major terrorist attack, an unacceptable terrorist attack on India, we have the right to take preemptive action. We've not publicized that doctrine, but that doctrine now stands. Vijay Gokhale, who was then Foreign Secretary, came out and read a statement to this effect. It's on record. Now, the whole question is that the Pakistanis, after Pulwama, have refrained from an attack of that nature, though Riyasi came very close to it. And Riyasi was a very close run thing. I put it to you, Rajdeep, that 9 people lost their lives, which was terribly unfortunate, but the number of lives lost could have been far more. And I have linked it in my own writings to the preparations that were made for the attack, and in fact the attack, which fortunately didn't succeed, on the Consul General of India in Herat in 2014. It was really a signal to Mr. Modi, the Riyasi attack. So after that, too, we should have anticipated that the Pakistanis and Munir in particular will now show his teeth. The problem
so what happens then? So what happens then to all? If that is the case, what happens to the doctrine of a preemptive strike? What happens to all the doctrine?
That is what I'm coming to. The problem with that doctrine is that how will you define an unacceptable attack? We still haven't done it. Either we say that every attack from Pakistan is unacceptable, and therefore we will choose the right to respond to it in a manner that we wish. After all, the good Lieutenant Governor of J&K has today himself said, if I read him correctly, we will avenge these attacks. Now, what does that mean?
Those are all fine. These attacks are fine words. There are questions being raised, though,
I'm asking a very specific question.
Sure. General Hasnain, you want to respond?
Is what that a sharper definition is needed by us, by our security planners, as to what is an unacceptable attack. And my last point, we are both, India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons. And my own contention has been that the government has to go on the front foot to tell the international community that the first step on an escalatory ladder is a terrorist attack. The attack of the kind which took place today is an escalation between two nuclear armed neighbors. And this is unacceptable to us. But we have not yet gone on the front foot on this. Defensive mechanisms have to be established. The grid has to be strengthened. But there is a general here and there is a police chief here, a former police chief, who will, I'm sure, agree with me that no wars are won only through defensive mechanisms.
No, sir, I take your point. Mr. Kaju, I take your point. Let General Hasnain, though, answer what you've raised. What is an acceptable terror attack that is acceptable in a way without escalating it further? In the past, as Mr. Kaju pointed out, the government had come out with a doctrine of preemptive strikes. Now we are in a situation where you had a series of terror attacks. And the government, according to, if Omar Abdullah is to be believed, has taken its eye off the ball, that is, the LG's advisors are busy playing golf. That apart, the truth of the matter is, how do you define what is an unacceptable terror attack that will be dealt with a kind of surgical strike, if I may not use the word, or a preemptive strike, as was the case a few years ago?
Rajdeep, that is something for the government to always determine. It's a very difficult call.
No, you see, they haven't. You see, when the government went ahead with surgical strikes, they said this is our new muscular strategy. What's happened to the muscular strategy somewhere?
Rajdeep, let's be sensible on this. You don't start responding to every single action that the adversary does. You wait, you let it. There are things which will be cumulative in this. You will have to threaten, you will have to look for opportunities, and you will have to strike at the right time. You will have to see what is the dividend that is going to come out of it. With every attack, if you're going to carry out something, then you may achieve nothing at the end of it. I would say, look at the ceasefire. The ceasefire is in place for the better part of the last 3.5 years, since 25th of February. Is that a way which you can abrogate the ceasefire and appropriately message Pakistan? Can you carry out a second set of surgical strikes now? I don't think that's going to achieve anything at the moment. Every situation has got its own calibration. And I'm sure that the government of India is looking at that adequately at the moment and will probably respond at the right time.
Okay. Because I think what was the fear was there was an anticipation
Rajdeep,
created.
May I say one word?
Yeah, final point. Yes, a quick final point, Mr. Kaju.
No, I entirely agree with Atta that you can't respond to every attack in a tit-for-tat fashion. But I personally think that a greater and sharper clarity is needed for Pakistan and the international community, that even if they are cumulative, where do we draw a red line? Red lines have to be drawn. They have to be enunciated. Without enunciating red lines, it remains very diffuse. Now, it is of course correct also to say that you should choose your place and time to attack. But my only point, and I have not found my friend Atta responding to it, do you ever win only in a defensive method? A war can it only be fought through defensive mechanisms and grids? Or do you have to go on the offensive sometimes? You have to decide on the nature of the offensive. But has any war been won in history? Please tell me, General. Only through defensive mechanisms.
Let General answer. 30 seconds, General. Is there a sense, therefore, that the government needs to come up with a clearer enunciation? When we keep saying zero tolerance from terror, it's all very well to say that. What we've had is a series of terror attacks, each of them getting more and more audacious in a way.
I agree. It's a very difficult call, Rajdeep, and I'm sure the government is considering that. I'm sure they're not going to transparently do that in public. But a situation the way it is building up obviously calls for that kind of a thing. And I do anticipate that at some stage something bigger is going to happen, as I've already outlined, possibility of something, some kind of a strike on the Amarnath Yatra or something like that, something very audacious, and that would have obviously crossed the Rubicon. So I think the contingencies are there, worked out. The National Security Council would have met several times. They would have wargamed this entire thing and will take an appropriate decision at the right time. At this time, for us to say that we need a clear-cut policy for every single terror attack may not be entirely right.
But I have not said that. But please don't put words in my mouth.
Let me leave it. Mr. Karju, I think what you've highlighted is an important point. There is an ambiguity over the doctrine that was enunciated a few years ago, and every terror attack in a way puts the focus and the lens on what the government intends to do, are the red lines when it comes to Pakistan and terror emanating out of Pakistan. Let's leave it for there at the moment. Mr. Khoda, General Hasnain and Vivek Karju, I appreciate all three of you fine voices joining me here on the show tonight. Jammu and Kashmir, the cycle of violence continues.